Here in the studio, my guest wrote the book, The Insights Collection, Insights from the Engine Room. He now resides in Florida, but worked for many, many years in the UK with clients that ranged from REM to the Police to Bob Marley, Matchbox 20, Elvis Costello, and Peter Gabriel, among many others. His career spanned more than 30 years and even included being asked to serve as the publicist for David Bowie's Earthling tour. He inspires audiences all over the world as a speaker. It's my pleasure to welcome to Now Hear This Entertainment, Tony Michaelides.
Thank you, Bruce. Thank you for having me.
Absolutely, Tony. Welcome to the show. Thanks for coming in to do this today.
My pleasure.
Appreciate it. We always start off the show by having the guest talk about an original song of theirs that we played during the intro, but that's not the case today with you. You are not a recording artist. I wonder, all your years being a promoter, did you ever do any singing, songwriting, or playing an instrument?
I did. When I was about 16 or 17, I was in a band, like every kid in the world was. I wanted to be either a professional footballer or be in a band. I mean, what else do you want to do when you're that age? I made that job with Manchester United, so I pursued with the band. And I basically was a bass player because I had the largest room there is. So that's the truth behind that. And then I left the band because I was lousy at it, and I decided to manage the band. So managing the band for a band that had no gigs and working here for the contract was quite an easy gig.
You played with them for how long?
All day.
But was this a year, 5 years?
A couple of years. They were mates from school, you know. A couple could play pretty well. They had a great little drummer and a good guitar player. But my best job in the band was naming the name of the band. Walk on out.
But see, I like the story already because, you know, people never consider that, say, for instance, in sports, they never think about people who choose to go into, say, in baseball, I'm going to become an umpire, you know, or to some extent they think about coaching. But so here's someone that, yeah, I started out as a musician, but eventually you're drawn to actually the promotion side and say, that's okay, I don't necessarily need to be a...
None of it's linked, trust me. I mean, after kind of school, I went to college, I think in England, called Third Education Television. I was done with school and not ready for work. So I kind of had a couple of years as doing a course in business studies, which is kind of my least professional skill. And then I got a lousy job, and then I applied for a job, which was in the local paper by accident, and I didn't get it initially, and then they wrote back to me after 6 months and said, do you still fancy it? So I started my career in the music industry in 1974, selling records out the back of a van for £25 a week. But I didn't kind of, I mean, my idea was, I mean, music was my life. I kind of, you know, I grew up in an amazing time, listening to, you know, in the Zeppelins and Floyds and then the Dylans and everybody from this end, and Joni Mitchells and Neil Youngs and what have you. So my education in music was amazing. I needed a job to buy records and go to gigs. So getting a job in the music industry was pure luck. As a careers officers at school don't actually, you know, train you for things like that and kind of, you know, point you in that direction. They send you to go to work at banks and insurance companies and become lawyers. But my idea was I didn't have a job in the music industry, so if I don't get it, I still don't have a job in the music industry. But I got it. Kind of.
You say you got it. Was it that job that they called you 6 months later and said, are you still interested?
Yeah.
What was that?
It was a job for a folk and jazz label called Transatlantic, which was based in London, and I was selling in the days. You remember when places had things called record shops? They used to buy vinyl, right? I was the guy that was kind of selling the records into the shops, and it was great because I did the major cities in the North of England: Manchester, Liverpool, you know, Birmingham, Newcastle.
Wow.
So I used to go in every week and I'd go through the racks, find out what they'd sold, and kind of top them up, you know. And it was great because, you know, it was the early days of Virgin Records. Virgin was Virgin Rags, so the first Virgin record stores sold clothes upstairs and records downstairs.
Wow.
It was cool. And it was an amazing time because it was kind of the overspill of the 60s, and the music industry was a great place. And obviously in the 70s, the Elton Johns and a lot of the guitar bands were coming through and stuff. So it was, my job was an extension of my hobby, basically.
And it sounds to me like you were pretty young at that point.
I was 20.
It sounds like a pretty decent job to have for a 20-year-old.
It was a great job. I mean, you know, it's kind of like, I mean, my story is ending up working with people whose records I bought as a kid. I mean, when I had done with sales, I got offered a job at Ireland in 1978. which was equally weird because here's a label that I grew up by bands like Free and Spooky Tooth and Traffic, and then all of a sudden I'm working with them. So not only are they going to give me all their records for free, they're going to pay me. So how weird is that? So I go from kind of, you know, growing up listening to Traffic records as a teenager and working with Steve Winwood.
Yeah, it reminds me of my early years growing up as a little boy and watching the Buffalo Sabres was my favorite hockey team. And then when I graduated from college, I got hired by the Buffalo Sabres. Now, this is crazy. My favorite hockey team that I watched growing up, now they're going to pay me, like you said, they're going to pay me to work for these guys.
Exactly. So it's just kind of living the dream, you know, I have no complaints. And in those days it was great. I mean, like I said, I got paid £25 a week, like $40 a week. But, you know, I mean, I kind of was living at home at the time. And, you know, all my friends, the interesting thing was all my friends who went to the same gigs and bought the same records all had access to the same local newspaper. It's like applying for, it's like going home from work and picking up the Tampa Bay Times or the Tampa Tribune and reading through the classifieds. That was the equivalent in Manchester. Yeah. So if you'd have done that and got a job here, then all your friends would have had access to the same paper. But they all went on to kind of the proper jobs of butchers and mechanics and insurance clerks and bank managers and things.
But like I said, the proper jobs. What parents at the time say, you need to get a proper job.
Exactly.
You can't be fooling around with this music stuff. That's not going to go anywhere.
Well, my mum's okay. I mean, my dad actually died a week before I got the job. But my mum, I kind of was at a moving out period, but I stayed at home. My mum was really supportive. I mean, she was a yoga teacher for 42 years, so she kind of, you know, she was teaching yoga before yoga was trendy, so...
She was teaching yoga before it was yoga.
Yeah, before Madonna made it trendy. And Sting.
Tony, your book is called The Insights Collection, Insights from the Engine Room. On the cover, there's a quote from Paul McGuinness, the manager of U2. The quote says, "It was in those crucial formative years that we were grateful for the passionate belief Tony showed in the band and for the personal and professional relationship that was built," end quote. That's a pretty darn powerful endorsement to have on the cover of a book. First, let's just have you talk about the book itself, how long it took to put it together, maybe any challenges you faced. It's 190 pages, so this isn't something that comes together just like that.
But it did, actually. First of all, the quote from Paul McGuinness really helped with Homeland Security as well, getting me in the country. Because that was one of the testimonials I used. Yeah, the book, I probably should say that, Bruce, actually, because I was living in Tampa at the time, and I had some friends that said, write a book. I said, what am I going to write a book for? Who's going to write a book I write? So all my friends are going to be phoning me from the UK and expecting me to kind of send them a freebie. It's going to cost me a fortune in postage. So I kind of relented, but at the time, I was kind of, no, I wasn't going to say I wasn't really going anywhere. I was living here, but I was bumbling along, so to speak. I got quite sure what I was going to do. And I wrote a blog every day, so all of a sudden I had a blog with like 30,000 words.
Wow.
So that kind of became the basis for a book. So I actually wrote a book in 3 months.
Wow.
And it's incredible really, because I sell more copies of my book now than I ever did. I mean, I got a local publisher because I didn't think, well, I thought that, even though I don't play and I don't sing, I kind of think like an artist. So the thing is, I was thinking in the same way as if you were a band or a singer, there's no point sending your music to a record label nowadays because they don't listen to unsolicited material, So some of the great bands can get away because they don't know where it's coming from. I thought the same with publishing. Who's going to read a manuscript by an unpublished author?
Sure.
And I was told since that, you'd be surprised. And then I thought, well, I don't want a literary agent because I'm going to get them turning around meeting them and they say, well, we need more sex, drugs and rock and roll. And I'm going to say, well, that's not my book. You need to go to Guns N' Roses drummer for that. Because no disrespect, but they don't have much more to talk about other than life on the road. They're the drummer in a big rock band. I've got better stories and better content, and I'm not ashamed to say it. So I kind of wanted, in the intro to the book, I said I didn't want to write a book. I wanted to write my book. I wanted to be about my stories and my experiences. Because I graduated in me. So for me to write about the stuff that, the journey that went along the way. And then the interesting thing is, kind of when I got into it, I kind of became like, it was there's some stories in it, like, I met Led Zeppelin when I was 15, and I kind of, I kind of took a paragraph of a short piece on Led Zeppelin, and I sent it to a friend, an old girl who used to work with me, and she on Facebook, and she just sent me a one-liner back, and it was like, beep, beep, beep tone, it's like being in the pub with you. Meaning like I write, like I talk, you know. And then I went away and I extended that to kind of a page and a half. But the things those things kind of helped shape me along the way, because I didn't realise at the time I was going to work in the music industry, but it made me realise what it was like to meet your heroes. So later on along the line, when I was working with artists like the Police and Genesis, and when U2 became big, you know, if you kind of had some tickets left and you could go outside and kind of give a couple of kids who couldn't afford to buy them off touts, like, the greatest thrill of life. The tickets didn't cost me anything anyway, but it was kind of great to be able to kind of give back, because I was in a position, you know, once I'd done the schlep with giving it to the media,
sure.
Left. So, yeah, I mean, I think the thing that, it's funny, because I look back now, I'm only 63 now, I look back and I kind of wonder if I was grateful enough at the time, because I kind of look back at it now, and I get lots of opportunities to go and do some really cool things. I mean, I was invited to Brit Week in Miami in February by the people that were organising it, and they've done these things in Miami and Orlando, and they're going to bring it to Tampa actually, and it's in Los Angeles and stuff. And they were going to get Phil Collins because he just moved to Miami, but they couldn't get him, so they phoned me, and it was great because I went down and spoke at the Great Innovation Awards. And the weird thing about it, tragic weird thing about it, was they booked me in December. The gig was February the 12th, and David Bowie died in January. So to do the Great Innovation Awards and have the greatest, in my opinion, innovative artist of our generation pass away in between, it's not like you need the material.
Yeah.
But also to an audience of people who can. I mean, David Bowie's kind of always been there. So, you know, it's kind of like, it was, so what I'm saying is I got some kind of cool gigs along the way to talk about, and I realised it's like, you know, people approaching me, and you know, we kind of live in an age of storytelling. And like I said before, I graduated me, so it's not like me going, it's not like a comedian going to Vegas and spending 2 weeks there and going and watching all the comics and pinching all the material and coming back and earning a living off it. All I'm doing is talking about my experiences along the way. And the book was kind of the lessons learned from rock and roll about risks and opportunities. And I found that people listen to them differently if they involve famous people. Because they kind of, a lot of people that in corporate America and elsewhere that run companies probably grew up listening to those records at college.
Right.
And I always think that there's nothing like music. You mentioned sport, no disrespect, but I was a huge Manchester United fan. I don't think nothing brings you back to a time and a place, and invariably with a person than music does. And we're kind of losing a bit of that now in you know, where we are with, you know, the music industry as such. I mean, whatever that is, that's what brought me here. But I think, you know, I mean, I can remember exactly where I was when John Lennon died and things like that, you know, so.
2 clarifications on things that you said. So when you said it actually came together quick after all, Bruce, I wrote it in 3 months. Was it you initially wrote it in 3 months and then somebody had at it and hacked it up and gave it back and said, now clean, like you mentioned, you know, oh, it sounds like you're talking in a pub, so, you know, okay, I'll maybe rehash it. Or was it, no, it was basically 3 months?
Well, there was a few, I mean, I wrote it in English. So with my initial market being American, there were certain things I kind of had to tweak for the American market as such. But I didn't kind of, the funny thing is I didn't do a deal with Amazon and people like that. Yet I know a load of people that bought it through Amazon, you know. But the thing is, I kind of, I had, like I say, a publishing company that kind of proofread it, but, you know, that kind of, one thing that irritates me to this day is there's a story about the first time I saw David Bowie, which was at the Hard Rock in Manchester. The Hard Rock was a venue that opened where Traffic played, and Lou Reed and Bowie did the opening 2 nights. And when they came to editing, they wrote David Bowie at the Hard Rock line at the Hard Rock Cafe. Like David Bowie played a cafe in Manchester. It was a completely different venue. It was nothing to do with a burger bar. And I'm not that David Bowie would have read that book, but you know, I'd have been horrified because that reflects on me. You know, so I wasn't happy about other people. Like nobody can. I don't speak to sound arrogant, but English is my best subject. So there's no spelling mistakes in it, and nobody can tell me anything about, you know, kind of verbs and adjectives. It works. It reads as a book. But I wanted it to kind of read like I'm talking to you. So when you kind of read it, you kind of feel you're in there. So if you did come and hear me talk, I'd be the same person. Because, you know, I wanted a sense of excitement to come through when I was kind of writing. And there's a complete difference between writing a book and talking about writing a book, because once I was into it, I got it completed, and we got it out pretty quick, you know. And I recouped, actually, because I paid for it. The publishing company didn't take anything. They were writing their own book and kind of wanted an association with me, so I kind of, you know, came to an arrangement with them, and they funded it, and I paid it. I recouped like in 8 days of sales.
Wow,
On Facebook alone.
That's terrific.
Yeah.
Wow, congratulations.
Yeah.
The other clarification, and I don't want this to come out the wrong way, it was just strictly a case of me misunderstanding. When you said they wanted Phil Collins, and they ended up calling you, is it, hey, Phil Collins isn't available, we need to find somebody else, or was it, we know that you know Phil Collins, can you call him for us?
I don't know if I was kind of second option or what, but Phil Collins basically got back with his ex, and she lived to Miami, so he moved to Miami. And Phil was involved with a charity that's affiliated with Brit Week, but he just wasn't available.
Okay.
So I have no idea why they contacted me. Hey, I'm not complaining. The thing is, it would have been, because I worked with Phil in 1981 on the Duke album, and it would have been so cool if he'd have kind of even just turned up, because I'd love to see him and just had a beer with him.
Yeah, absolutely.
And say to him, sorry, I kind of blew you out of the gig. I'm sure kind of his career is okay without doing it.
Yeah, I think so. This is episode 129 of Now Hear This Entertainment, and I've been blessed to get listeners from 116 countries around the world. This show is geared toward not only fans of the guest each week and fans of, I guess you could say, good music interviews in general, but there's always an emphasis put on the listeners who are up-and-coming musicians, singers, songwriters, entertainers, artists, who are trying to learn from my guest each week. And while I'm sure your book does some fun storytelling, it looks like you aimed at that same audience too, yes? Because on Amazon, it has your book in 3 categories: career development, vocational guidance, and business.
That's really interesting. I had no idea. Thank you for that, Bruce. Really, that's good. That's quite flattering. It's interesting because, like I say, I'm a great believer in music, and I find it difficult going to kind of music schools and talking about it, because I did something for an audio engineering class in Tampa a couple of years ago. Like 40 kids in a room, you know, I just did the one-on-one like in the actor's studio thing. And there was a time when I kind of looked out the audience. I thought, well, where are all these people who are paying like 30 grand to be educated going to get these jobs? Because where do you see recording studios? Where do you find record stores? I mean, it's a much changing business. But I kind of, when it comes to like up-and-coming musicians, I mean, I have great stories that equate to incredibly famous people, like you two. You two were very good when they began, you know. But we're talking about them later. But it's belief, you know, and it's belief. And the thing is, if you're an artist and you get up on a stage, you have to kind of have so much belief that you can do this. Because like any artist, you want to project what you're doing, your music, to as many people as possible. So, but it's tough. It's kind of, you have to have almost like a relentless belief, because of the way the industry is as such. I mean, like when I was growing up, I mean, you know, if I liked an act, I bought the records and I supported them. I went to see them, I bought the next records. I wasn't alone in that. Whereas now, kind of, you know, you want a new shirt or a pair of trousers, you can't download it. You have to go buy it. We have a generation of people growing up, I think, that never had it to miss it. So I kind of get really tedious about that when I kind of want to turn around to these people and say, do you know what you're missing? You know, because I just worry when, I mean, Led Zeppelin, for instance, like, you know, they sell more records to people who, or did, over the last few years, to people who weren't even born when they split up. Because those people were going into their parents' record collection, and it wasn't a bad record collection to go to.
Yeah, that's amazing. Let's go ahead. Let's go back to the quote from U2's manager. As I mentioned, I'm sure the book does a lot of storytelling, so let's hear one surrounding U2. But if you would, along the way, just tell the listeners about the work that you did with them, what your role was.
Well, basically, my story with U2 is kind of, I worked for Island Records from 78 to 80. Then we all got made redundant. I was on the road, and Island hit some financial difficulties, and they couldn't afford to pay a team on the road. You know, I was doing the radio and TV and press in the northwest of England. I got a job, fortunately, like an hour later with Charisma, working with Peter Gabriel and Genesis, which were at the time the biggest bands I'd worked with, apart from Bob Marley. So when a friend of mine sent me a tape by this band, and kind of with the idea of me going to see them play in my local polytechnic the following week, it was one of those things where he was the kind of guy that got excited about a lot of things. So I eventually relented and decided to go. I went with a local DJ who was living with me at the time. He was my lodger. And we went to see them, and they were third on the bill. And this was kind of 1980, I think. And they weren't kind of that good. I mean, Bono was kind of awkward, and he was swinging from the rafters of just saturated pipes, which are burning hot. Adam looked like a complete dog. Larry was a good solid drummer, and the Edge was good, you know, but it was kind of like, you know, like Nirvana were in the garage. You shouldn't be very good at that stage in your career, but they had so much kind of, you know, enthusiasm and things. And then they came out at the end of the night, when everybody had gone, like midnight or something, to meet every single person who wanted to meet them. And we stayed behind to kind of say, and they were in awe of us. Oh my God, the local DJ's got to see us. We were really excited and stuff and things. But we went home and we kind of, you know, we woke up in the morning and had some breakfast, and we're still kind of thinking, there's something about that band, you know, it's kind of what it is, you know, kind of. And then we continued to talk about things, and then they did actually sign to Ireland. But you two kind of, you know, I mean, there was the December that year, we saw them in September, I think, but December that year they played like 10 London shows in 14 days.
Wow.
So they hadn't really toured or anything. And Bono had even come over to the UK to try and do the rounds of the record company. So there's a real persistence story about you two, and nobody wanted to sign them and stuff. But I remember taking them to their first radio station, and you know, they were like, Bono and the Edge were like these two excitable kids in the back of the car, you know, and we were driving in the pouring rain like 2 hours from station to station to get some little interview that went out on midnight on Friday night to a specialist, you know, they had the specialist radio shows in those days. And I just pulled up and turned the windscreen wipers off of the engine. I just walked back to them, and this is kind of educational for artists. And I walked around them and I said, listen guys, I can get you in here because of who I know. Only you can get yourselves back in here because of who you are. Because in the same way, like you present radio shows, I mean, you come in, I've got them in, right, because I have a relationship with the DJ. But then that guy is the guy who's going to phone me up and say, hey Tom, those guys are amazing. Anytime they're playing Glasgow again, bring them in, talk to them anytime. So it makes my job easier, and it makes them understand. It's kind of what you used to refer to as kind of media training, because you just talk to them on the way in about who this guy is, what his audience is, you know, how influential it could be. Because, you know, I mean, you can get some artists who kind of, you know, don't perform well, and then they get a clip round the ear, because, I mean, they make my life a lot harder. Because you want artists to appear above being a catalogue number, you know, but they were really good at that, even to the extent of going to the pressing plants and meeting the people who were pulling records out of the bags. I mean, what would that mean to some guy who works in a warehouse all day, pulling records out, passing them up, and mailing them to stores? They don't become a catalogue number; they become real. Yeah. You know, I mean, yes, they're going to meet the media and some of the record store managers, but
that's impressive.
And it was impressive. There's a lot of things about them. I mean, I saw that band play to 11 people in Manchester, Bruce, and 4 of those people were with me. I mean, I've got photos on my Facebook page of them on my porch, you know. When my daughter is in the tour manager's arms. God rest his soul, he passed away like, you know, a year or so ago, Dennis Sheehan. His only other job was assistant tour manager with Led Zeppelin, and she's kind of about 1 or 2, and my daughter's 34 now with 2 kids, you know. So if you look back fondly, what I love about it is it's kind of a band going through its apprenticeship and paying its dues. We were talking before about, you know, I mean, some of the things about, you know, what it takes to make it, so to speak, is, you know, is blood, sweat and tears. I mean, those things don't change. I mean, Zeppelin went up and down the countries of America and England in a crappy little van with the tour manager driving, playing every dodgy dive that they could to build up a core fan base. You two did exactly the same thing.
Great stuff, great stuff. I am Bruce Wozniak, and joining me today here in the studio is speaker, author, music man Tony Michaelides. Check out his official website at www.tonymichaelides.com. His name isn't quite as difficult to spell as mine. It's Michael with I-D-E-S after it. But of course, you can always look at the title of this episode on your listening device to get the proper spelling, so as to check out his website. He's also on Facebook, Twitter, and LinkedIn. Use the icons on his website to find him on those social media networks. His book is available for purchase on his website or through Amazon. And contact Tony as well to book him as a speaker for your next event. Be sure that you're also checking out www.nhte.net, as in Now Hear This Entertainment, nhte.net. For every episode of this show, we've got on nhte.net the full audio, plus the guest's photo, a link to their website, and quotes from the guest on each show.
Sign up for the e-newsletter at nhte.net and subscribe to this podcast and tell others about it too. Subscribing is free, and it makes it very easy to get the show every week on iTunes, Stitcher Radio, or by following on SoundCloud. We are thrilled to now be on Google Play Music too. Go ahead and use the social media buttons on nhte.net to like the Now Hear This page on Facebook and to follow on Twitter and or Instagram. If you're a new listener to the show, thank you, and please do check out some of the prior episodes of Now Hear This Entertainment. We've had a lot of great guests along the way so far. I'm going to name a few of them here shortly. As always, many thanks, of course, to those who are not first-time listeners. I very much appreciate your time and your interest and support. And by the way, whether you're going to look for Tony's book and or other books, music, whatever, go to nhte.net and click on the tall Amazon banner to get there, so that you can help this show in the process of buying whatever it is that you need from Amazon.